Okay. Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Tuesday, November 29th, 2022 meeting of the Cohasset Select Board. I'd like to call the roll, starting with Corey.
Corey Evans here.
Paul Grady here.
Jean Haley Dippled here.
Jack Creighton here.
Diane Kennedy here.
Okay. Also in attendance is Town Manager Chris Senior. As is our custom, we start the meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance. All those who care to join. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. Although this is a hybrid meeting, which is it is Zoom and in person, but there are also tonight's meeting, to the extent that it's on the Zoom platform, it will be live streamed on Cohasset 143 and also on Cohasset's Facebook page. The public is invited to participate on the Zoom platform, which can be accessed using the link provided at the top of the posted agenda for tonight's meeting. Members of the board and other scheduled participants will be able to participate when called upon by the chair. Board members will be able to ask questions of any participant. All votes taken at this meeting will be by roll call. Members of the public who wish to ask questions are asked to raise their virtual hands on Zoom, and at the discretion of the chair will be promoted into the meeting. Members must provide their full name and address for the public record. Please note that comments on platforms other than Zoom will not be monitored. This meeting is being recorded and will be available for later viewing on Cohasset 143. And just to make it easier, if you are trying to participate from Zoom, it may take us a while to see that you're waiting in the waiting room, but we do have our communications director who will be doing that. We're going to start this meeting by going into an executive session using exemption number 6 to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real estate. If the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body, the chair so declares. The board will see an update on a potential property acquisition. Also, executive exception number 3, to discuss a strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigation of the whole body, and the chair does so declare. The chair declares. The board will discuss potential, litigation. Chair would entertain a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
We have had a motion made and seconded to go into executive session. I'll call the roll, starting with Corey.
Corey Evans, aye.
Paul Grady, aye.
Jean Haley Dippled aye.
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Jack Creighton, aye. We are going into executive session. For those who are watching, we will be back at approximately 7 o'clock.
7:30.
7:30. Good evening. I would like to reconvene the Tuesday, November 29th, 2022 meeting of the Town of Cohasset Select Board. We opened earlier. We were in executive session. We are reconvening, and although we're not technically required to, I just do want to do a roll call, starting with Corey.
Corey Evans here.
Paul
Paul,
Grady, present.
Jean,
Jean Haley Dippled here.
Diane Kennedy here.
Jack Creighton here, and our town manager, Senior. Okay, first, as is our custom, and for those people who are rejoining us, we've already saluted the flag and we've already done a lot of preliminary stuff. We do have a custom of allowing members of the community to, in an open session, to raise any item that they feel is important. The ground rules are that you keep it short. There'll be no discussion about it afterwards. There'll be no back and forth. It will not be considered later on in the meeting. It may or may not be included in a future agenda. Is there anybody who has any comments they'd like to make? And there's nobody waiting in the Zoom platform. Okay. Let's move forward on our, the first thing on our agenda is the approve the Cohasset Triathlon for June 25th, 2023.
Chief, quickly, on the Zoom.
Yep, I've already promoted both of them. They'll be popping up here in a second.
Yes, hi, can you hear me? This is Bill Burnett.
Hey, Bill, how are you?
Great, thank you. Can hear me correctly, correct?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you, Select Board. This is Bill Burnett. I am coming before you like we do every November to have your approval for the Cohasset Triathlon. The date that we have selected is Sunday. It's the last Sunday of June. That's June the 25th, 2023. So I'm just coming before the board for that approval of the date.
Any comments from the select board? Any,
Yeah, just some general questions. Bill, if you could just brief us, only because the public's listening as well, just in terms of same size. I believe it's the same weekend that it has been traditionally, and whether there's any other changes being made. If Chief, we could weigh into.
Chief, should I start first?
I'm
Yeah.
just trying to, I've sent a text to Justin trying to promote me to panelist. I'm not seeing it. It won't turn my camera on, but at any rate, this is just an okay for the date. Everything is.
I want to see them.
Oh,
There we go.
there we go.
Get me now?
We got you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so this is just an approval for the date. We're gonna obviously come back before the board, later in the winter. Probably around February with the actual plan. But, from my preliminary talks with Bill, everything is consistent. Actually, it ran real well last year. We were, done and out of everybody's way in less than, 3 hours, really. So we anticipate no problems. And at this point, we know the drill. How many years has this been, Bill? Sorry, you're muted.
This is now our 14th year, Chief.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Seems more like 20 years, but it's we have this down pretty well. And again, it's used as a training exercise for the police and fire departments with interoperability with other towns, as well as the regional dispatch and our mutual aid partners. So I anticipate no problems, and we'll come back with more meat on the bones probably around February or March for the board.
Yeah. Chief, Chief, that's spot on. I would just add exactly what Chief said, that there are no changes. This is a triathlon that occurs at Sandy Beach. I'm proposing a Sunday, June the 25th. This has also, I should tell the board, been approved by the Sandy Beach Association. They're obviously an important part of the event, and they have granted their approval in the last week. So Sandy Beach is great with it. The date is the same day as always before, with a swim at Sandy Beach, a 12-mile bike, and then following with a 3-mile run. It would be the same size as always before. Yeah, I think it's going to go well again this year.
Jane and then Paul.
Well, I was just gonna say this gives people plenty of time to train, so I would move that we accept the date, June 25th, 2023, for the Cohasset Triathlon, subject to the secondary meeting that the chief is going to return to later on in February.
Second that.
We've had a motion made and second to give a preliminary approval. Is there any,
Point of clarification, just as a motion to reserve the date. This isn't, since we don't have an event permit, we can't approve the permit. So it's a motion to reserve the date, but we do have to approve the event later on. Is that correct?
Yeah, subject to that
Thank you.
second meeting. Yeah.
Any comments from the audience? All right, and, all right, we have a motion made and seconded to approve the date of June 25th, 2023 for the event. Hearing no further discussion, I call the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries unanimously. Bill, thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Well, yeah, no, thank you, board, for the continued support. And what this means for us, thank you, because of this approval, is we can now open up registration shortly this month and then start creating some enthusiasm, getting the town involved and all. So this is perfect. Thank you very much. Very much.
Well,
appreciated.
that's how we
Happy
start
holidays.
spring and you put Cohasset on the map.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Okay, moving forward, South Shore Community Center, Santa is coming to your neighborhood event to approve that for December 3rd, 2022. Do we have anybody representing that event, or Bill?
There's somebody there.
I'm not sure that she's here, but I was in contact with her earlier, and it's a pretty low impact event. All her paperwork is in. I believe the board has it. Sort of, basically Santa comes in on a boat. There's a small, similar to the Little League parade, comes from the cove up to the community center and lands at the community center. There's not, again, not a lot of impact. It's a relatively compact event. It's it's a group, and the on-duty personnel are going to assist with this as they always do.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board?
Mr. Chair, I do have somebody named Ocean with their hand up.
Okay.
I don't know if that is the person, but.
We'll ask them to identify themselves by name and
They're now allowed to talk.
what?
They're now allowed to talk.
Okay.
I'm asking to identify themselves.
Could you identify yourself with the name and address? You may have pressed the mute button. All right, Ocean, we can see you're talking, but you probably have a larger name than just Ocean.
Might I suggest Santa can maintain their anonymity and we can just move forward on
Yes.
Yep, I would move
approving
to
this?
approve.
Santa remains unanimous. Is there any further comments?
I'll second anything from
Move to
Santa.
approve the boat event for December 3rd.
All right,
Second.
we have a motion made and to approve Santa, to approve Santa is coming to your neighborhood for December 3rd. The motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much and welcome to Santa. Moving on, Eagle Scout project for Drew Olson of Wheelwright Park. Drew, are you here? Would you like to tell us what you're going to do?
I would love to. Where should I stand?
And right there.
All right, perfect. Well, hello, my name is Drew Olson. I am a junior at Cohasset High School and a current Life Scout with Troop 28. I'm here tonight to ask for your approval from the town for my proposed Eagle Scout project. The sign from the north main entrance of Wheelwright Park was knocked over. It is in need of being rebuilt. My project is to rebuild the gateway with some adjustments, mainly to the DPW specification to fit a backhoe through the entrance. This entails raising the structure higher through the use of already sourced telephone poles. The rest of the structure will be made from salvaged cedar similar to other existing entrance on Forest Ave. The original sign was salvaged from the accident and will be reused. We plan to locate the old holes, dig them out, and find the existing concrete. Once the entrance's construction is complete, Scouts will assist in a barn raising style of raising the sign, for a front end loader is not tall enough to raise the arch on its own. It will be attached to the top to prevent the arch from falling out of the Scouts. The arch itself will be constructed in the field near the entrance, and the holes are to be behind the brick wall and not restrict the entrance. Once placed within the holes, Quikrete will be poured into the holes and allowed to set. I asked if the town is willing to be the benefiting organization in this project. Brian Joyce has agreed to sign on behalf of the town with your approval. I'm also working with Mr. Joyce and Mr. Howland to see about the requirement of a building permit. After receiving town approval, I will then get BSA approvals and from there be able to actually start in full, which will begin in the spring of 2023 after the thaw to make digging easier and finish at the very latest October 5th, 2023. That's my 18th birthday and that's the limit of being able to achieve Eagle.
Be a party, huh?
Okay. Party. Well, thank you very much. Select board members, do we have any comments?
I'd make a motion to approve that project.
The only
Go ahead.
quick question is,
Right,
does this board have the authority to waive building permit fees?
yes.
Because, I think that would be part of
Add
the
that
motion as
to a
well.
motion, yeah.
So let's do it, and if we can't do it, we'll figure it out.
Well, we'll send you the bill.
So we make a motion to approve the project sans
And
building
with
fees.
two motions, one to approve the
waive.
project, another one to waive the fees. Diane?
No, I just wanted to make a comment. Drew, congratulations and thank you for that presentation. This is an exciting project and the town of Oh, there's more. We want to see that, but
Oh, okay, well, let's
I was
see.
just gonna say, we've been so lucky with so many Eagle Scouts in this community, so I'm just grateful. Thank you.
It's awesome.
That is actually Mr. Lear's drawing of the sign with all the measurements,
Oh, wow.
telephone poles, cedar, and that was just the next steps. Thank you.
Now, that will be done in time to sell the pumpkins, because
Yes,
if not, you're gonna have a guy behind you's gonna want to talk.
Yeah, and just one question in terms of where is it located? Is it right out towards North Main Street?
Yeah.
Or further back in?
it's right behind the stone wall to wheel right, so it won't squeeze in and not be too far out.
Great.
Any other further questions or,
No, we got the motion made.
yep, motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Now we want a motion to waive the building permit fees.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion made to waive the building permit fees made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Drew, thank you very much and congratulations.
Thank you. Grill him a little bit.
Building it's gonna be fun.
This is the easiest part.
Okay, moving forward, we have a disclosure from our town council. It's in the packet and basically KP Law, our town council, has also been retained by the South Shore Vocational School. And she has disclosed that she sees no conflicts with her, and should any potential conflict arise, she would apprise us immediately. In order for her to accept this, we have to agree to that, and the board can look, and people at home can see the disclosure. Is there any comments on this? Hearing no comments, any comments from the audience? Okay, Chair would entertain a motion.
It is determined pursuant to Rule 1.7 of the Massachusetts Rules of Professional Conduct, the Cohasset Select Board consents to KP Law PC, representing the South Shore Regional Vocational School District as special counsel, as disclosed in a letter to the town dated October 26, 2022. Notwithstanding that KP Law PC also serves as town counsel for the town of Cohasset. Signed, the same board.
Second.
Second.
We've had a motion made and second to approve the disclosure. All those, is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, use of $100,000 from the Special Education Reserve Fund. We can vote to approve that. Is there any comments? Do we have anybody here to speak to that issue?
I move that we approve $100,000 from the Special Education Stabilization Fund in order to pay special education tuition settlement.
Second.
Okay, we've had a motion to, made and second to approve $100,000 for Special Education Reserve Fund. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on, ARPA funding to complete the Treats Pond project is 32,000. Is anybody here to speak to that?
Is Brian up on the? Brian Joyce? Yep. Brian is up.
Okay, Brian?
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes, we can. There we are.
Hi, how you doing? So this request is to complete the permitting for the Treat Pond pipe extension. As you know, we went for an emergency certification with Concom and back in May of last year, and we installed the pipe already. Upon installation of the pipe, day one, the flooding water was immediately reduced, and that has been sustained. Water quality in the pond is improved. But this is to complete the permitting. We still need to go through the MEPA filing and the Chapter 91 filing to adequately permit the installation of the pipe. So that's what this appropriation's for.
Any comments from the select board? Corey?
Just a question for Mr. Senior. Chris, just on, I mean, we've talked to this board, and Gene, you brought up before about pulling from the right bucket. Is there a different source we could use this money for rather than pulling out of the ARPA? Because ARPA has different restrictions on it. What would be your guidance in this?
This does involve resiliency issues, which kind of, and so I think it fits squarely within both. We could spend the town received cash on almost anything. The other money that the county controls, we may even be able to get money from that. So I think it does fit within it. In the alternative, again, we had set this. Farley County came in after we had already moved on the warrant for town meeting. I mean, the only alternative would be to pull money out of free cash, which is another alternative, and that would mean an amendment to a motion, which are prepared now for 2 weeks. That would be the other alternative. I mean, again, as Brian said, the work's done. We got to just pay the bills. And again, because it costs a little bit more at the end because of the method used, but it's worked really well, and it won't have any major issues, hopefully, for a long time.
We can apply to the county, you said, and you think this
We
is.
could. I mean, we could both, we could, as the board's done before, authorize the use of the money that we have on hand with a caveat that if we get money back from the county, we'll use that. We can make that application and see what happens.
Thank you.
Okay. Gene?
So timing wise, in terms of paying our bills, could we apply for the restricted funds or restricted ARPA funds, see what happens and then pay? And then if need be, we'll return to the well on the unrestricted?
We do need to pay these now.
Okay, well, that's
And
the
get
question.
ourselves balanced. That said, we can apply and see what happens, right? And if we get at the very least, Jennifer and all in the town, the county can just,
So we can approve
Funds the
this,
money.
and then if you get the
Just
money,
reallocate.
you can reallocate.
Yes,
All right.
correct.
Okay, so any other questions?
John, just a comment that at some point, when Jennifer gets fully her feet on the ground, I would love to have a conversation on our agenda about ARPA funding, where we stand, what's still available for applications, et cetera.
Okay. All right, is there any people from the Zoom platform? Is there any further discussion? Anybody in the audience?
Motion to approve $32,000 on ARPA funding to complete the Treats Pond project. Thank you both.
Second.
The motion made and second to approve 32,000 for Treats Pond. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries unanimously. Moving forward, Town Hall Building Committee.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask you Tracy just made me aware that apparently the South Shore Community Center was also going to ask for a waiver. There's a $250 fee, and she, I guess her Zoom connection kind of cut out, but we did get that transfer.
Okay, does anybody like to make a motion to waive the Santa fee?
So moved.
Seconded.
Santa fee is,
Santa's got some cash. Hold on.
yeah, he's got, oh,
Humbug.
last time I said anything about Santa, I called him a fat fraud. Christmas was grim. Anyway,
Moving on.
moving on.
We didn't vote, right? We had a
We did
motion and a
not,
second.
I know, we have motion and second. I had to make a funny. Go ahead, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries unanimous. Okay, moving on to the Town Hall Building Committee. Would you,
Yes, presentation that Justin has.
yep. Could I ask the members of the Town Hall Committee who are here to stand and identify themselves? This is a very extraordinarily hardworking committee, as are all of our committees. They have been particularly hardworking, so I
Sure. Phil Lear, Chairman, Town Hall Building Committee. We have Carolyn Coffey with us on the committee and Mark Cameron. We have 3 of the 7 board members with us tonight, so we don't have a majority. We don't have to do a roll call, but we should have John Lemieux on here.
Right.
There he is. John is
thank you for all three.
representative, works for Vertex. They are a project management group. And he and Mark will both be talking about this schedule that they're going to present.
Okay.
John can go into some of the particulars of the schedule, but this is a schedule that gets us from this past October, because we've actually already started part of this here process in order to meet a deadline for Springtown meeting. So this is the steps that are needed to get us from where we are now to having a bid in hand for the renovation rebuild of Town Hall, and present that with a bid in hand for Springtown meeting at a somewhat date to be determined. So there's many steps. It is a tight timeline. John can walk us through some of the tight timeline, but in annual town meeting, you were previously approved to spend $200,000 for a CM firm, to bring a CM firm on to provide us with an estimate. So currently, we haven't spent any of that money. And before we start interviewing CM firms, we'd like to get the affirmation of the board here that this is the timeline that we should proceed with, as this timeline is a document that will need to go to the CM firms as part of their proposals. So it's important that we give those CM firms this timeline and with an expectation of what we're looking for.
Can I just
Diane?
ask a question? Is there any way to get this document up on our screens? Is it in the OneDrive?
Yes.
Okay.
It should be. No?
I did not get that.
So we just. Only because I've got old eyes. It's late.
It's on Zoom.
Yeah, but it's,
John, you're on the other side of the room.
Give me 30 seconds.
Okay.
That's great. Thank you so much. Don't want to hold it up, but I'd love to
TV's not
see
that
it.
big. Or we could log it.
yeah, John, if you want to walk us through some of the steps
Sure.
there
Yeah.
while they're waiting to get that via email.
No, thanks, everybody. This schedule here basically is a rough week by week schedule that we started in October to basically earmark the end of the design process and takes us through right up until the notice to proceed for construction. There's a couple of, as Mark alluded to, there's a number of steps here, number of parallel steps that need to be taken, many different paths being followed at one time. We've already put out a request for qualifications for CM at risk firms. We had done that previously about 3 or 4 months ago, but the design wasn't ready yet. So we said, you know what, let's just wait, get a little further down the road. At this point, the design is essentially complete. There's a few more things that need to be done. We don't finish it entirely. We let the CM, once they're on board, kind of run through it with us. But I'll get more to that in a second. So we've already received responses from CM at risk firms. We're going to go through those shortly
and then put out very quickly, as Mark alluded to, a request for proposal. And in that proposal, we need to give them the schedule. You know, we need to tell them when we're going to bid the job. We need to tell them when we're going to start the job and move from there. So once that firm is on board, that's kind of the yellow sections that you see here. The first thing they would do is do an estimate of the drawings that they have. And we would look to see where that estimate comes in. And again, remember that estimate's being done by the firm that's actually going to build this thing. And then they would come in and, you know, suggest any value engineering options. And while they do that, and while the team at Johnson Roberts kind of tweaks the design, makes any changes to kind of get us, help drive budget, costs lower, we would already start pre-qualifying the subcontractors for the project. State required process for any project over $10 million. We have to pre-qualify all the trade contractors in about 15 different categories, including electrical, mechanical, plumbing, fire protection, all of the standards, painting, and a number of others. We would actually go through that pre-qualification process and then bid the project. We go out and bid the project. The trade bidders have to be bid and advertised, as do the non-trade bidders. And this is, the benefit of CM at risk, but, we as your OPM, along with the design team, go through and get to see all of these bids in the assembly of a guaranteed maximum price, GMP. And that GMP would come in right before town meeting, so that on town meeting floor, we would be presenting you with a total project budget that actually has the bid number in it. Obviously still has contingencies and all those good things. And we would bid that project, have the number, go to town meeting, go to a ballot vote. And then upon, a successful ballot vote, we would contract with the CM. But as you can see in that long brown bar, we don't give them a notice to proceed for a while. And why we're doing that is because the marketplace today is still experiencing, while we're hoping to start to see some costs coming in lower, lead times for certain things are still long. As an example, if you buy a generator could be 18 months. Well, if your proposed construction duration is only 14 months, you're never going to open the building with the generator because it's going to take 4 months longer than the duration you've suggested. So what we're doing in our project now is building in this section of weeks here at the beginning just for procurement and saying, don't put a shovel in the ground until later. Again, we need to work with the committee, kind of finalize these numbers a little bit, work with the CM that we choose, but go from there. And we talked about parallel paths. One of the other things we need to do, is get the town hall a place to live while we change their building. So the bottom 3 bars have to do with advertising, contracting, and then relocating town hall. So that long brown bar serves a dual purpose. It's not just time to give the contract or the CM time to do their submittals and shop drawings and get a jump on procurement. It also gives the town hall folks a time to figure out where they're going to go, to sign a contract for that, and to relocate. And then the construction would start, notice to proceed on the ground construction would start sometime the beginning of August and would go probably, we're figuring about 16 months from the start, from August of this coming year. A lot of info, but let me know if you have any questions.
Questions, Diane, did you?
Yeah, just a couple of questions on the timeline, and obviously it's been said before, great work. Thank you so much. Excited to be here. The CM contracting, so you'll be reviewing the bids in like 2 weeks from now? Am I reading this right?
So basically, that's a great question. We're already a little tight,
Yeah.
We had put this out. If if everybody in that room is on board with going tonight, we would have an RFP out within a week, give them a couple of weeks to turn it around. So we're going to lose a little bit of time, but we do have some float in that gray bar down below. So if our RFP phase takes a little longer, and remember the proposal that the CM is giving us isn't bidding the job per se. What they're doing is giving us the price for the fee, the profit they're going to charge on the subs, which we're not going to bid those subs until late March or April. And they're going to give us their costs to run the job, their general conditions that, we're saying is 16 months from August moving forward. And then they're going to give us a price for pre-construction. You know, some piece of that $200,000 that was approved at, you know, a prior town meeting for the CM at risk services. That's what we need them, you know, that's the first piece we contract them for. And those other things come, you know, as sub bids come in, and we kind of, their contract starts as that one task, but yet we fill it out for their profit percentage and we fill it out for their general conditions. And then as the subs are bid, it rolls into that GMP, but we don't sign a contract with them for that until we see if town meeting approves it. So from now until, you know, the brown star, basically, they would work for some portion of that $200,000 that you have, you've already earmarked. And we would, of course, that's essentially what's getting bid, you know, in the next few weeks, just that piece. And then they give us, you know, they let us know, and it helps become one of the things we compare. They let us know what their markups would be on the rest of the work. And that's how we compare, you know, is CM firm A better than B, better than C? One of the benefits of this CM at risk process is we go with the best fit for the town and then look at price separately. So sometimes you go with maybe the guy who's the middle price as far as markup, but, you know, because he's the, you know, he or she did the best presentation of understanding of the project. And again, that's something we would work with the building committee, and, you know, we would come with a recommendation to execute a contract, you know, based on the results of, you know, the RFP phase of this process.
Okay, thank you.
Just one follow-up. As somebody that's been doing work on my house and it's impossible to get contractors, I mean, is kind of the word already out that we might be issuing an RFP? And do you anticipate any trouble getting a CM on board sometime this month?
So we already have, so it's a great question. We had 3 firms respond. So those 3 firms all want to get the invitation to the for the proposal phase. It's CM at risk is a 2-phase process. So if they send us their quals and we qualify them, and again, that was only a couple of weeks ago, unless they got some big new job between since then and now, I would expect all of them to respond to the RFP. And then later, we, you know, they're just the leaders. You know, until we get to the blue section, you know, we won't know, you know, 90% of the cost until we get to March, late March.
Okay. Other comments? Justin, is there anybody in the waiting room?
I do see that one person has their hand up.
Okay,
Mike Dick, Capital Budget Committee.
okay, could you promote him?
Yes. Mike, you're live.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for taking my call here. The question I have is for the select board. Has the select board reached an informal consensus that this project will go forward?
No.
Right now, we've committed several $100,000 to the planning, but we have not gotten any kind of indication as to whether the town will support the spend. And I worry that this project will come before the capital budget committee and perhaps advisory, but speaking for capital budget, our role is to make sure that this project can fit within the town's means. And I don't believe that any work has been done towards that. And I would also recommend that there be some kind of research or fact finding to get a sense of, would the town vote for this project? Is there, and I don't know the answer to this, but I'm just going to raise the question, you know, has there been or could there be any polling? Could there be any assessment of the appetite for the town for this particular project? Should it pass on the floor of town meeting in April and then go to the voters at the ballot?
Okay, thank you, Mike. I'll take a stab at that for the select board, and any select board member who'd like to, you know, add further comments is more than welcome. The voters ultimately will make that decision. This project has a history of close votes. It's been contentious for a number of years. We have a town Hall Building Committee, which is very experienced people who've been working with the community. And they were asked to determine what makes the most sense, and this was their conclusion. There are other things and other alternative things that have floated around, but at this point, to the extent that we support this, that will be an indication that we feel that there is sufficient support, that is sufficiently well-grounded, and it is worthy of consideration for the town meeting to ultimately approve. But we always have to remember that it is in fact a town-wide meeting that has to vote to approve this. I think this committee has worked very hard. I've been in a number of their meetings. They're very, I think when capital budget looks at what their work product, you'll find that it's well thought out, well researched. And I think to the extent that the select board votes to proceed with the construction management phase, that will indicate that the select board believes this is a prudent expenditure of funds, well-researched. But again, the ultimate answer will be in the hands of the voters. Corey?
I mean, this is, Town Hall Committee, been doing this for years and we've gone through, I think it's, from my point of view, it's time for us to get this to the voters. And the question is, that I always get is, how much is it going to cost? Right? That's always the, well, how much is it? Is it 8? Is it 14? Whatever. So I think our goal right now should be to get the voters the best possible answer to that question. That way the voters can decide. We will be back here because we haven't had a proposal yet. We haven't had the guaranteed maximum price. I think is just a fantastic way to ensure the town, this is the amount of money. It's not going to go higher than that. And it lets us decide that with the best information. So to that end, I think we have to move forward here to get it to the town because the town needs to vote on it. And we have to give the town the best information. We haven't heard the full proposal yet. We haven't heard the GMP yet. So there's a lot of unanswered questions, but we got to get those answers and then we can make a decision.
Jane?
Just a reminder, the town meeting already voted on this money.
Correct.
We are executing the will of town meeting right here, and the Town Hall Building Committee is, doesn't need to, but I think is, wanting to come before the select board to help keep everyone informed, which I think is very wise. But a town meeting did already vote on this money in order to move forward in this direction. So town meeting has already spoken. The bigger question of how much the ultimate amount is, this is why we need the construction manager to figure out that amount. And Mike, as you know, as we've talked about and have been moving forward, albeit slowly with a gap, we are already engaged in a long-term financial planning process that is going to be reinvigorated with our brand new finance director in early January. We know this is probably going to be one of the top items that we model and we figure out with the help of our new finance director, who's extremely experienced in long-term financial planning. And yeah, I do think that we should have that close look, but at the same time, we are executing the will of town meeting right now, which is our both legal responsibility. And at the end of the day, I think that, we're trying to work in a collaborative way to figure out what the best solution is. That said, I do have some questions that I'm happy to table until later, because Diane, I think that you want to
No,
respond.
I had my hand up earlier and I just wanted to say, I was going to say exactly what Jean just said. I mean, this is something we discussed, and voted unanimously to recommend to town meeting last May. And then during the summer, when we were getting our financial management or, long range planning going, we had a discussion too, that this was an important next step. We had to get to the point where we were talking real numbers on a real plan that's been batting around the town for the last 10 years. And to your point, Mike, I think, and I'm sure the committee is well aware of this, that, it is a hurdle in terms of addressing all the questions and concerns of the people in town that are going to be asked to vote for the final funding of this. And I think that that's something we as leaders in the town and working with the town hall building committee are gonna have to do a real effort on making sure the various committees and the citizens in general get the information they need to make an informed decision. So
Thank you, Diane. Paul, you want to?
I agree with Mr. Dick about the polling, but I think the polling, open orders, the polling should come with the actual numbers as to what it's gonna cost. And then we throw the polls out. And then see what people have to say. And then that's where I'd look into it. But when they see, as Corey put it, a final figure not to exceed the total use for the town hall. Have we looked at things like, again, restoration or complete rebuild, all that, those things. But I do agree with the polling, but only after the final numbers are in, on everything, all your hard work.
So any comments from the audience? Mark?
So,
Identify again so people.
Mark Cameron of the Town Hall Building Committee. So this timeline puts us to deliver a price for annual town meeting. And fact or fiction, there's a perception out there that topics of this nature are not to be brought up at special town meetings or other town meetings. So this is a path that gets us with a number to annual town meeting. The next bite at the apple at that, if that's the perception, would be another year from that point. So, again, costs would continue to escalate.
Thanks, Mark. Any, Jane, and then it's anybody in the waiting room? No, okay, Jane.
So I did have some questions on the timeline and the project. So in terms of the timeline, if the select board, because it goes the way that I understand, and Diane and Chris, correct me if I'm wrong. We, the select board, have to have an amount for a debt exclusion. Let's say it happens on the same weekend as annual town meeting, 60 days in advance. And so we would need to try to figure out.
Is that for a ballot question you said?
For a ballot.
Oh, okay, so, all right, but not for town meeting.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
good.
not for town, but under the law, I believe it's a 60-day advance timeline that we would need to meet to get it for the spring election.
I mean, I think just like at Hingham, you have to notice the election, but I don't think the numbers are finalized till after town meeting.
Okay, okay,
Because I think you have to vote, you have to have an exclusion. I mean, again, I see John's raising his hand. He's been through this a lot of times.
okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure we're clear on the timeline on that aspect.
Yeah, I think, again, engineer, not lawyer. I will tell you that, as it showed in that timeline, we're gonna have an estimate by the CM as the first thing they do when they get on board. So that's gonna be kind of our gut check, and to be able to report to the building committee and to report to you folks, guys, here's where it's coming in. But given this timeline, and as Mark said, it's tight, and all the requirements of, chapter 149A bidding with trade bidders and everything else, we won't be landing on that actual number for town meeting until the end of April. Now, if you tell me that town meeting is now the second week of May, awesome, you just bought us 2 weeks. But there's no way we can have a final number for you 60 days before the vote. Never happened. We're out of time already, just given all the prerequisite times we need to do and follow for a CM, getting them on board, getting the value out of them to review the drawings and do any value engineering. We wanted to go straight for bid and minimize the effectiveness of having one like that gray bar. If we got rid of all of the potential VE time and went right to bid with these drawings, yeah, maybe we could pull it off, still have some work to do. But I think that's not best for the town of Cohasset. I think you want the value of having them on board and collaborating with them. So if we can give you a rough order of magnitude of what that number is going to be on town meeting, because we're going to need to work to that and make sure that, we stick to that budget, but it's not going to be final until we get closer. Unless you guys, and if you say you have to have the number by then, the other problem that is if you want a bid number, I don't know anybody in this market that's going to hold their bid for 60 days to get through to a town meeting and then through a ballot vote. So what we're going to try to do is get the plane to land, as it's kind of running out of gas from a time standpoint, and then go to it, go to the town meeting, go to your ballot and have those bids kind of stay fresh within like a 30-day window so that then we can contract and move ahead with them.
Jane, you wanted to,
So Chris, remind me, last time we looked into this, is it that we need to put a ballot question on, but we can have a blank for the amount until the last?
Yeah, let me double check with council.
Okay.
And remember, you can also adjust the election date too.
Yeah.
I mean, so you can have a little more gap. Historically, it's been tighter, but it doesn't have to be that.
Yeah.
okay.
There we go. Move town meeting. It was a 68 to have it as part, because last time we talked about this, it was part of a more general election. Is 60 days for a special or is it 45?
Again, let me
No,
double
right,
check.
okay.
The ballot has to be set far enough in advance for people to see it.
So Chris, you'll give us a timeline?
Yeah.
All right. Diane, was that?
No, I was gonna put Carolyn on the spot. Do you even remember whether we had the number in the?
Yeah, it was 2 weeks, but we were working off estimates.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
so Chris will give us,
I'll check.
okay. So we should have that end of the week?
I'll check with Carolyn.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Research this.
Any other comments?
Thank you, guys.
Jean? Yours?
Oh, no,
No, and then I'm sorry.
Nope,
just tap.
she had a question. I was gonna make a motion.
Oh, okay.
So Paul alluded to this, but I was wondering, when we do the CM bid, are we gonna get a price and estimate for the reno and rebuild as well as the full reno? So 2 options?
One option. And there's never, the building has been designed to be 1800s portion renovated, restored, preserved, if you will. And then the 1980s to be demolished and rebuilt with a new addition. So the two structures are not independent of each other mechanically. The way that they're designed, their systems that reside in each structure that service the other structure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We discussed that at an earlier meeting, I thought, Mark, that we would get a renovation cost
Well, it will be broken out
defined
for accounting purposes.
in the plumbing, but I thought we would get, 2 different separate.
The estimate will be broken out, but constructability, feasibility wise, it can't be built that way. You can't do one without the other.
Yeah, but in terms of, we can we, John, ask them for an estimate of what the reno of the complete building would cost for comparative purposes so that we can say, hey, if we renovate the whole building, it's X. If we do the plan as we think it should be done, it's X plus Y, and there is value to Y, and so that we can explain why this plan makes sense.
So we could certainly ask for a number. The problem is, Carolyn, is that if we're going to town meeting, we should be asking for a project, not a
Totally.
project or B project, because the renovation piece of the historical building wouldn't really change. Keeping the 1980s edition and doing a renovation of that has not been studied at all, because the
Don't
feasibility study.
misunderstand me. All I'm saying is that at one point in time, it was going to, the differential between the 2 projects gave you far more value in a building than the cost differential, and just making sure that that's still the case, which one would presume that it is. If it's, if the difference in the 2 plan, in just renovating the building versus doing the project as we have it is, throw a number on it, $2 million, but we get all these benefits for that $2 million difference.
So I think in this early phase with the CM on board, we can have them and Johnson Roberts estimator kind of put a number to a renovation of just the existing structure. Again, it's not going to, remember, we have 100%, essentially 100% construction drawings to build the project that, Mark just described. We can certainly get an order of magnitude number as to the renovation, but that doesn't have 80 pages of drawings and 1,000 pages of specs.
That's fine. I think we understand that. Paul and then Corey. Corey?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, you already have a lot of that information, right? Because there's a repair estimate that I saw, I think, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we already have a basis to have that conversation.
We can update it.
Yeah, and I do think that I think it's really important to understand that when we're talking about the project, you have the historic renovation as, you know, a significant chunk of that money. And understanding that when we talk about the project as a whole, I think everyone, period, supports, I know a lot of people support restoring the town hall no matter what we do. And we just need to understand that that's built into this too.
Diane?
Yeah, I was gonna say that having that order of magnitude is gonna be helpful in advocating for the piece, but it's not really the purview of the CM person. And I also just want to say that the select board, and it was a couple years ago, when we charged this particular town hall building committee with the folks sitting in front of me in their cohorts, we specifically charged them with pursuing design for a renovation and a rebuild of the building. So they were not given a charge to relitigate and relook at the two different options. The option was voted on by a select board, and that was what was given to this group in front of us, and that's what they've been working on for the past 2.5 years, so.
And I think the people at home might benefit from knowing that the question of renovation versus a new of the annex part of the town hall was something that was discussed in depth, and the conclusion of this committee and the previous two committees was that by trying to renovate the newer 1950s style building, it was not very cost effective. By the time you got into it, it would probably cost you as much as even more, and you'd end up with a far from ideal building. So that decision and that question, which is a crucial question, by the way, has been analyzed by, this is the third committee that's looked at it, and they've all come to the same conclusion. So people should know that this is not an issue that has not been, that's been ignored, but the reality is they've done a good job. I'll say no more. Any other questions from the select board? Any comments from the, and Jean, I see your hand.
One thing that I think would be helpful, notwithstanding everything that you have on your plates and we have on our plates, is for our residents to envision what the town hall space, particularly the auditorium space, could be in terms of function and activity beyond what it is today. And I think that most people frankly have a perception, I come there to vote and maybe I see a play. I'm in there 2 times a year for a lot of residents within the town. And so I think that it would be potentially both beneficial and important generally for us to collectively think of ways to better utilize that space for the benefit of our residents, to make them appreciate that a new space could be something that they could enjoy and better utilize and use, for example, for things from, and I say this without regard for the liability associated with this in insurance, but like a soft toy playroom or a place for an indoor farmer's market or a place for a pie contest for the town, like things to better utilize that space. And one thing we could try to do is draw people in over the winter by holding maybe a few sort of pilot events while they can also see the condition of town hall, because I do think a part of this is frankly going to be communication and PR.
Totally agree, and that was brought out the last time kind of later in the process, so I agree. I think that's up to us.
Yeah.
More than this particular building committee.
Oh, they had plenty of time.
Just letting you know our double circuit
I think there might be, I would like to make a motion, but I believe, is there somebody else that wants to speak?
No, it's, yes, okay,
Yep, Russ Benetti has his hand up.
all right.
Russ, you're up.
Let me unmute myself. I'm just curious when you may have numbers ready to be reviewed by the Community Preservation Committee. We had voted a couple years ago to support the renovation and restoration of the old part of Town Hall. But we have almost a whole new board since then. So it's going to be a lot of people having to get up to speed on it from where we were. When might we be able to see something on that?
John, that's Russ Benetti is CPC money. That's the renovation.
No, thank you, Russ. I think based on the schedule we're looking at, I think mid-January, second or third week, we've got to get the CM on board, get them familiar with the same process, and then, obviously when we have them run through the drawings, we'll make sure that they can kind of partition their number a bit so that when we come to see you, you can have a good understanding of, what's in the historic portion, what percentage of this new systems that, like if the heating system is, in the new, but it's feeding half of the square footage, we'll be able to break that stuff out for you as well. But I would think the middle end of January when we have an estimate from a CM.
Okay, great. Look forward to it.
Thank you. Jane and then Paul.
Chris, one thing that I know Mark, when I was on CPC, asked about was to the extent that there's a formula that they should be considering. We should know that now. And so would you mind asking KP to see what, if anything, we should be considering, and circle back with Russ and Mark to make sure if there has been an evolution in the law that we know what it is.
I think what you're alluding to is some of the soft costs associated with the design, the relocation, some of the other costs there that may not be
Square footage.
Or in square footage, but are a direct result of the project happening and the need to facilitate the project.
Okay, Paul?
I still think it's very important that we do have an estimate of a restoration of the town hall standing, the existing 1800s town hall. There should be at least two estimates, one for the town hall is envisioned and a separate estimate for rebuilding and restoring the original town hall. And I think those are things that should be presented to the public. Regardless, if town hall doesn't fly, or it does fly, or it passes or fails. But we should have two estimates to present, at least two to present to the public.
And I think they said they're gonna do it.
No, if there's more discussion, I would like to make a motion
Oh,
eventually.
okay. Any further discussion? Mark?
I don't think it's that simple. I mean, if I'm understanding what Paul's suggesting is having two scenarios, a scenario to restore, renovate the 1800s, as well as scenario B to do both sides, the 1800s and the 1980s. Is that?
No, that's scenario is, we discussed this, is just restoring as the town hall as is.
Both buildings.
No, if you sliced off the annex and got rid of it, for instance, and we restore the original town hall.
That's a different design. We don't have that design.
I don't think
It's something that we could theoretically envision, but it's not a design.
Well, Mark, is that what Russ is talking about? That the CPC is authorizing funds for the restoration of the old town hall?
Correct, but if an electrical panel, let's say, resides in the new structure, it's servicing both buildings. You can't just say, draw the line and say, we're only doing this building. Air handling units.
The new structure is going to house a portion of the infrastructure for the historical building. So if you just focused on, we want to do a historical building someday, that hasn't been designed. Where do you put the air handling units? Where do you put the boilers? Where do you put all that stuff, which right now is being powered and cooled and heated from a chunk in the 1980s edition. So while when we give a number for CPC, we're going to be able to say, okay, there's I'm just pulling numbers, 10,000 square feet in the old and 20,000 in the new addition. Okay, roughly 1/3 of shared system costs for electrical and HVAC would be considered part of the historical piece. So we don't have an idea of, we have a rough idea of the restoration of the building, but we don't have a design that says where are all the pieces and parts going to go. So, you know, to Mark's point, you know, we can get you in the ballpark of what that would be, sure. But we don't have a design to give you an apples to apples number. You're going to have one estimate in, you know, 2 months from now, that's an estimate on 100% construction drawings, and another that's a portion of that, but it's going to have some assumptions, because we don't know exactly where we would put the air handling unit or the transformer or those things, because a lot of that stuff is going to be in the new addition that's been designed. I mean, we can give you that, we can get you a ballpark, but it's not going to be, you know, you'd get two ends of the spectrum. You've got completely construction design plans and a portion of that.
I think that's acceptable, but I just think that the town, you know, has the right to see every option that's open to it. That's all. And it's, you know, if you have preliminary or something like that, or as you said, ballpark, but I think the town should be able to see every option that's open to it.
Okay.
Another way to understand that is like, it's perspective, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of what, I think perspective is all what we're searching for here, is understanding what these decisions mean. And I think you guys have said, you've been looking at that the whole time. So getting us that perspective, I think is, you're all.
We can do that. We can do that.
Okay, so are there any other comments? Yeah.
Just to wrap this up, I mean, again, I think that the building committee's been charged with bringing us to a point where we have a building to bring to town meeting, to get funding for, et cetera. And I think we probably should have a separate agenda item and maybe some forums where, you know, we answer a lot of Paul's questions have been asked and answered in the past. That doesn't, but it's going to be incumbent upon us to re-discuss them with the community so that they know when they get to a decision-making point, they know that there are numbers that made certain decisions at certain points in this process happen the way they did. So
I suspect there's going to
and I
be
think
a
that's
very,
us.
very robust discussion
Right, and I
of all that stuff coming
you know,
in.
I don't think it should be on these guys who have basically been charged to bring us this at every point. And so with that, I would like to just make a motion that we approve the schedule as provided to us for bid in hand for 2023 annual town meeting.
We have a motion, is a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion made and second to proceed with the timeline. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I wish I could
Thank
say
you.
you don't have more, but
Thanks, John.
you've done very, very well. Okay, you can stay.
I gotta get my Christmas lights up.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, moving on. Cohasset Elders Association has a little presentation from Tana Carlson. You don't?
Nancy LaFosse. Nancy's here.
Oh, Nancy. Oh,
Popping up right now.
all right, Nancy.
Candace is in the peanut gallery.
I'm the cheering section.
You're the cheering session.
Nancy, you're up.
Tell her Tana's here.
Hey, Nancy, we can see you.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. I thought for sure I was going to have trouble with this, but I'm glad it all worked out.
Well,
So-
you're here.
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, Tana is here in support of me. I heard somebody say Tana, so thank you, Tana, for being there. But I just wanted to thank you guys for letting us on the agenda this evening. We're just here to present a draft of the Cohasset Age Friendly Action Plan. And Nettie Nettle and I have been working on this for a couple of years now. And if she could come on, I don't know, Tracy, if you can get Nettie as well to come in. I just wanted her to talk for just a brief couple of moments of the last couple of years, and then we'll wrap it up for you. So yes, that is our document. So if while I'm waiting for Nettie to come on, if she's able to do that, I know she was waiting in the wings as well. We just wanted to say that, so back in 2019, we started this, and at that time, they gave us they gave us 2 years, and then the pandemic hit in order to have an action plan, which is something that we had an assessment. We did a survey of the town, and we compiled all that together. And the result of that is in this plan. But I know that Nettie wanted to say a few words, and then I will talk a little bit more.
Nettie, are you around?
Yes, I sure am. I'm not sure where my video is, but I'm going to start talking and maybe it'll pop in. So just an overview. I know we've talked about age-friendly before. Some of you are familiar with it, some not. It's a much lighter, easier topic than the previous topic, and we are not asking for any money, so that makes it even a little bit easier. In 2006, this is very brief, the World Health Organization and AARP came up with the concept of age-friendly communities. It was a slow start. In 2018, though, Massachusetts was one of the top 2 states to become age-friendly. Becoming age-friendly is not a goal you achieve. It is a commitment that you're always going to focus on 8 different domains. As I said, Massachusetts committed in 2018, Cohasset committed via applying in 2019. Once we applied, they accepted our application, and we did that with the select board at that point in time. From that point in time, we were in an assessment phase. We just wrote our action plan, which Nancy and Chris just reviewed together. Once we are hoping that you all will review and accept our action plan, as did our own Cohasset Elder Affairs Board, we will formally submit it to AARP. Then we start our ongoing endless cycle of improvement, which is, of course, assess, implement, ongoing for age-friendly.
Thank you.
Just take them down.
So
No, she's still there.
She's still there. I just,
Be muted. I see Nancy's.
We can't see her.
we can't see you.
There we go.
There we go.
Sorry, I was sharing the screen.
so just make.
No, that's a draft.
Nope, you can't hear you.
You're muted.
Yeah.
There should be a little button that says unmute.
She's
Can you
on.
still hear me perchance?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so obviously in preparation, Nancy and I spoke ahead of time. So what she was going to say is, we request that you all review our plan. And if you have questions, please email them or call Nancy. If not, we are hoping after your December meeting, you give it the final stamp of approval, as we're hoping to get it into AARP right before the Christmas holiday. So our request is just that you review our short, sweet, efficient 20-page plan.
Jean, and then Corey and Diane.
Thank you for the plan. I look forward to reading it much more closely, but it looks very comprehensive. One thing that I wanted to raise is I am aware that the police have now had a very significant increase in complaints, including identity and other types of fraud complaints, which I know are increasingly targeted at older Americans. I wonder if there's room in this plan for more partnerships with the police and other law enforcement to avoid the numerous scams that are out there that I know our police are constantly dealing with, from all ages, frankly. I recently filed an identity theft complaint myself, about 2 months ago. And so I do think that sort of education is really great and can really prevent, some scams and fraud that are very hard to unwind. So in any event, I'll make my comments over email, but I did just want to highlight, I think we've got a great police department who is very, as you all know, user-friendly. And so I think that even if they came and just talked about like scams to be on the lookout for, it might help.
Absolutely. And we have featured that in our monthly newsletter as well. But the age-friendly plan, it's interesting that we started it, but Nancy is working with her peers. So the premise behind age-friendly is if it's good for someone who's 88 years old, it's good for someone who's 8 and everything in between. So I think that would be a great opportunity for us to spearhead certainly an educational program or two each year.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very good. Diane?
Thank you for this. I did want to say, I think the police department partnerships come under the health services and community support in the program without specifically mentioning what Jean brought up, which is great. And I just wanted to say, Nettie, thank you. It's great to see you. And
thank you.
If I have this right, and I don't want to out you, but Nettie moved out of town and she's still very tethered and connected to the community of Cohasset. So we really appreciate that.
Yes, thank you.
Any other comments? Well, for both of you, thank you very much for the good work. People who are not of a certain age do not realize the wonderful services that our senior center provides. So thank you from the town's perspective. Nancy, were you raising your hand to speak or?
Still can't hear.
No, still no.
Can't hear you.
I'm sure whatever she's saying is really good.
I will say that Nancy did come to me with me. We had a great meeting the other day. I was so excited when they brought this to us 3 years ago, and it's really part of a 3-phase plan. This is one, and dementia friendly is another part where the center has been very active, and that's something where we're always. And it's again, it's a perpetual engagement. And the third is to get this center nationally certified. So that's another ongoing project. So fingers crossed, that'll be something that'll happen sometime next year. So, I mean, apart from the amazing work that goes on there all the time anyway, this is really great policy level stuff that I think really, it just gives people a sense of confidence that we're here for them at all stages of their lives. So it's you know, Nancy and Nettie and all the work of the Elder Affairs Board, Tana representing them, and it's great. It's great work.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from anybody in the audience or? Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're looking for full approval.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. A very important person.
I just wanted to mention that the idea of getting certified, we are one of very few senior centers in the state, although there are people around that have persevered there and for a little small community. These guys have done such wonderful work. And we have in fact worked on it for about 2 years. They're doing a great job. I just wanted to let you know.
No. For the record, that's Tana Carlson, who lives on Wheelwright Park.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
It's great that we started off with an Eagle Scout, which Cohasset really has overachieved in, and then we're talking about the Elder Services, which are overachievers as well.
Okay, moving on. Long-term financial community update, the charge and the vote. We have a new finance director, Jennifer Mullen. And the purpose of this is to officially put her on the long-term planning committee and to make her the chair and moderator. It's all in your packet. Do we have any discussions on this?
I was just going to say that since we've charged a lot of people on this committee and it hasn't met in a while, I'd love to get the committee's feedback. I know they've got some work product. I'd love to have them come to us to just show what they've worked on already and then have them discuss how they want to move forward. I think that'd be appropriate for us to get their input on this too, because I do think slimming this down to make it more efficient makes a lot of sense. But I think we should get their feedback on it first.
Jean?
Yeah, so Corey, I'm not opposed to that at all, but I do think we have had a long, I don't want to say delay. I mean, we have been waiting for on the staff side to get reoriented and to give our town staff the sort of bandwidth they need in order to reengage at the level that I think people want to reengage. And so I could foresee that happening in January, most likely, because I'm not sure that we're going to have, we might have an initial meeting in December if we can figure out that in terms of timing and people's schedules. But just to set expectations in terms of like how quickly people are meeting. And I do think that Jennifer, and one of the reasons that she was such a strong candidate for Cohasset is that she has a lot of experience in long-term financial planning and will be such a wonderful addition to this committee, including to help organize, keep it on track, and really help advance it in a very feasible, practical way, and be able to help make recommendations on streamline too.
But we don't need to
Well,
charge. We can Chris can just assign Jennifer to the committee. I think that's going to happen anyway.
Corey,
right?
Diane?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, I am ecstatic about Jennifer being in charge and moderating this committee. I think that's really where this kind of an initiative belongs, is with the staff, with the support of the committee. The only question I have is, how does this charge as presented compare to the original charge, which I couldn't find?
The only new piece is what's in bold.
Okay.
So the only new addition is
Is the
Jennifer Mullen,
Okay.
Cohasset's finance director, will moderate this committee. The moderator shall organize and chair all meetings of the committee and prepare the agendas. And I did send this to Jennifer earlier to say, is there anything else you'd recommend that we should consider? And she said no. I think that where we are is we just need to actually do the work now.
I suggest we direct Chris to charge Jennifer to be the staff member of this committee. We don't have to modify the charge for it, because it just says it's going to be staffed by Chris or his appointee, or that's usually how we make them. So Jennifer is not an appointed person; she's assigned by Chris. So we can just make that without modifying anything. Right?
We have the power as the select board. This is a select board appointed committee, and we do have the power to do that. Paul, did you have something to add on that?
But we can't appoint her to the committee because she's not a resident.
So Corey, I looked at a prior charge for long-term finance planning, and this was exactly what they did for Chris, who's not a resident, and for Chris Senior, for our town manager. And so I just copied that same format. Chris, what do you think? I mean,
This all makes sense.
It's 6 of one, half a dozen of another. We've talked to Jennifer. I think, again, I've talked to Gina about this. I think having her in the middle of this is the neutral staff supporter of which allows all the elected and appointed board members to really hash out the policy. And she's there to give to help that conversation go. She's happy to do it. And again, I think, as Jean pointed out, I think 5 years ago when we did this in a different version, I think I was the chair, the moderator. So again, it's not the chair. It's not a voting member in that sense.
Right, exactly.
She's moderating the sessions. And my office is I don't expect her to run the Zoom meetings. We'll support the Zoom meetings.
To Chris's point, it's 6 of one, half dozen of another.
But she's gonna do this
We
anyway,
really
frankly.
aren't updating the charge. The charge is
Yeah.
the same.
Yeah,
We're just basically saying Jennifer's gonna run it, so.
Yeah, and I think this is a very, very important committee, and for the select board to get involved in who's the moderator. Now, this is not a voting member. It's a very important point. But as a finance director, we're very fortunate to have Jennifer.
So if we want a motion, could I just move that the select board approves the appointment of Jennifer as the staff?
No, that
staff
would
member to the
be,
committee?
well, it's the same thing.
Well, just to get us a vote.
I don't think there's any difference.
I think I do prefer that we do the charge as presented, because like I said, it was like the past charge, just for consistency's sake, that,
But this doesn't have any appointment stuff on it. So like, I'm just saying if we adopt this charge, it feels like we're adopting whole new policy.
Well,
And we're not changing
well, what it does do though, Corey, is that it defines the role. Okay, so it's not appointing her, it's creating a role of moderator and appointing the town's finance director to it effectively by the charge is on call. So, whether you can take her name out if you want, just say the town's finance director will moderate, and that's her. So, I mean, if that's what if you're concerned about that, and just say.
Well, this is we're just adding this language.
Yes.
We're not, because I think the question is, well, what happened to all the appointments and all the other stuff we've made?
Oh, yeah.
I just want to be clear. This is purely an addendum. We're adding this. Okay, so
Yeah.
because
Just
this
adding
part doesn't say, it
information
doesn't say
in
to
bold.
add on or anything like that. So,
Yeah.
okay, then I've misunderstood what's going on.
Right, I think I'm understanding.
Chair would
yeah.
entertain a motion.
Yes, I would move that we add to the Cohasset Financial Planning Committee charge that Jennifer Mellon, Cohasset's Finance Director, will moderate the committee. The moderator shall organize and chair all meetings of the committee and prepare the agendas.
Second.
Had a motion made and seconded as spoken. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstention. Motion carries unanimously. Okay, now moving on to the MBTA Communities multifamily legislation. We're aware that there's a lot of legislation. And I know we have some stuff in our packet on that. Lauren's here.
Good evening, everyone.
Take it away, Lauren. So Lauren Lind, our planning director.
Lauren, you have the ability to share as well if you'd like to share.
Okay, great. I'll share my screen then. I have the presentation ready for you.
Good.
Thank you all. I'll just get myself ready here. All right, can you all see the screen there?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. So tonight, for those who don't know me, my name's Lauren Lind. I'm the Planning and Zoning Director for the town. I'm going to talk a bit more about really the MBTA multifamily zoning mandate that's been discussed by the state. This is something that I've been before the board on a few occasions now. Previously when the rules were in draft form, and now we have guidelines that are in final phase. So that's why I'm back here to you tonight to talk about really what this means for us and finally get your consensus on how you want to proceed. So there is a lot of material that is going to be a little bit repetitive. I won't go into great detail on this, but I will do just a little bit to refresh your memory. And also for those who may be watching who haven't heard this before. So just to go over some quick terms that we'll use a lot when we have these conversations, we talk about the Department of Housing and Community Development, DHCD as an acronym. That's the state branch of, housing and legislation. That's who is sort of the overseeing agency from the state side that takes a look at these regulations and sets this. Subsidized housing inventory is something that we talk about. It's a Chapter 40B legislation from the 80s that was really about housing. I'm not going to talk significantly about that tonight, but I just left it in the slide as it's typically helpful context. Also some discussion about affordable levels and different tools on the side of the screen that you'll see in front of you. I won't go into too much detail, but I will just flag for you again 40R, because it's a smart growth overlay district that was enabled by the state that can it essentially give you the framework of zoning bylaw to work with that you could then adopt in your own community at your own personal scale that would allow you to use different tools and techniques to do multifamily housing and sort of sustainable development and design principles. And then lastly, 40S, which is below it, which is a mechanism to allow 40R districts to get additional funding for schools to offset any costs that may be incurred by additional school children added to the area. And there's a formula in which that's calculated by. So I just flagged that for you because I might reference that again later on. Our subsidized housing inventory, I'll just quickly touch on this because it's in the slide and I don't know that I've had the full chance to update all of you yet, but with the MBTA with the MBTA figures that have come out for the draft regulations that I'm about to get into in more detail, they've been using a 2020 census figure for our year-round housing count, which has not been finalized yet. So we don't have a updated 2020 decennial census figure for our subsidized housing inventory. However, if the MBTA and DHCD is using that figure, for their count. I'm just using this as an example to give you a more clear count for what we can anticipate for our subsidized housing inventory. In the meantime, since we're still currently using 2010 census figures for the subsidized housing inventory, and that's statewide. Previously, and for the last 10 years, we have been over the 10% threshold. That is the requirement for the minimum of your total housing stock to be deed restricted affordable housing pursuant to this Chapter 40B requirement. If we use the same number of 307, which is subsidized housing inventory units that we currently have, if we use that same number and we don't take into account any units that are coming down in the pipeline, and we use the figure that the MBTA has been using for our 2020 total year-round housing units count, we come out to 9.2. This is, we had already sort of been projecting with our housing production plan that we would be about 25 units short using 2017 data from the American Community Survey, which is a in between the census data collection tool. Now we can really more sort of precisely calculate that if this figure of 3,341 total housing units is the correct number that they ultimately come out with when they finalize that figure that they use for the SHI, then we can predict that we will be a shortage of 28 units. And then what I'll flag for you on the next side of the screen is the units in the pipeline that we've discussed. These will be familiar addresses for you. 87 and 89 Cushing Road, those were the offsite units associated with the Quasit Harbor Inn redevelopment site. There's 390 Chief Justice Cushing Highway, 1 Pleasant Street, 147 South Main, 55 South Main Street, which is pending currently in planning process right now. And then we have 808 Jerusalem Road. All together, we have approximately 45 units that will be SHI eligible in our current pipeline. So those are just to update you on figures. I'm going to move on because that's not what I'm here precisely to talk about tonight. MBTA multifamily zoning is, it really is Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 3A. So you'll hear oftentimes at state level, they refer to this as the 3A law, not to be confused with the 3A state highway. It's just referencing this legislation. What this legislation requires is that communities that are MBTA communities, which includes whether you have actual transit station or you're an adjacent community to a community that has a transit station, they're requiring that you have at least one zoning district that you can have as of right multifamily development permitted. That means you can go to the building department, you can get a permit, you can use site plan review to sort of look at traffic and circulation and design standards, but you can't use site plan review to allow something that is prohibited as of right. So there's no special permit criteria. It's no conditional use that you're reviewing. It really is sort of a more cut and dry permitting process. And the state also has tagged this that if you do not comply with this regulation and all the parameters that go with it, there's 3 specific funding sources that you will not be eligible for, and they sort of flag that in their discretion, the state may use this towards other grant awards in the future.
Lauren?
Yes.
Yeah. Lauren, question on that. Specifically, what are the 3 sources? Is it, for example, money for a regional sewer project, hypothetically speaking? Is it, for example, money from the MSBA for a new school? Is there any indicia that they would prevent a community from that potential grant? I'm trying to get a sense of what we're talking about.
Absolutely. So currently it is very specifically outlined, which is the good news. It's the Housing Choice Capital Grant Program, which currently we're not eligible for anyway. In previous years, after the Avalon Bay development, we had such an uptick in our percentage of housing production that was calculated for about 5 years into that figure that we were eligible to be a housing choice community, which meant that there was sort of, it was like a carrot program for communities that were already excelling in their housing production to then be eligible for additional grant funding. So there was a small period of time that we were eligible for that level of funding. We're currently not anymore. There's also Local Capital Projects Fund, which I had reached out to Don Pyatt at the time to see how that would impact our budget. It wasn't substantial. It's not something that really does. And I can get more detail about what that fund is. That's the least one I'm familiar with. And then the last one is, which I think would be the biggest potential loss if we were not eligible for, is the Community One Stop for Growth program, which is the state has really combined a series of grant infrastructure programs One of the ones that has been wrapped into this program is MassWorks, which is a very commonly used infrastructure program. You can use it for example, roadway, sewer connection, you know, these are sort of the construction example projects, but the One Stop has been expanded to wrap in several other community programs. So you can do things like zoning, there's all sorts of, it's like an umbrella organization. So that is really the one that I think they're using the most to bar, you know, that's the incentive that you want to be able to be eligible for that. With that said, since they've transitioned to the One Stop program, we have applied, but we have not had a successful award. And that has been, I would say that they've transitioned from the individual fractured grant programs to One Stop within the last 2.5 years.
Lauren, is that One Stop one of the ones that's like a 4-year cycle that?
Like Complete Streets.
So that's right, correct. That's Complete Streets. One Stop is eligible. You can apply each
Okay.
round that comes
We'd
out.
still be eligible for Complete Streets though.
We would still be eligible for Complete Streets currently, but that's also to be said that this is the state saying that in its discretion, they may in the future add more to the program. But right now, it's only these 3 that they're outlining.
Yeah, can I follow up on that? Because I think Jean was getting to that, which is, I mean, is there a limit? Like, they can't say, we're not gonna send you special education funding, for example. Like, does it have to be within a certain state, or are they just dangling the threat that we can pull anything?
I don't know the full extent to the answer of that question. But I would say this is a test in the water. I mean, ultimately, this, I really think genuinely what I've heard from peers in the community is that this is sort of a reaction from a state level to 40B not achieving the housing development goals that they wanted to in the manner in which it was. So this is another attempt. So I think ultimately right now they're starting the program and they're going to see how the efficacy, and then they may in the future, if it's not working and there's a lot of communities saying this isn't worth it for us to comply, they may reassess. You know, I can't say what they will do. But right now it's only these 3.
So Lauren, I think the thrust behind that is if the requirements are sufficiently onerous, the town may in fact say it's not worth it. But what I'm hearing from you say is that if the town were to say it's not worth it and not comply, that the state might just figure out more ways to force us to comply. Is that?
Correct. The state has been very clear that they keep on referring to it with the terminology that it's a mandate, and they're you know, so it's very much, this is not an optional program. But again, communities are going to have to take the action to come into compliance. It's not like they can just flip a switch and mandate something and then it affects the communities because of the home rule and the way that our local government is structured. It would require town meeting action, and I'll get more into that in a little bit. Any more questions on the funding piece?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm quickly, because as a planner, I just feel it important to just share the educational background as to why the state is doing this and why multifamily zoning is an important concept. In the state, this is a lot of information that's from the state, but I will also echo that a lot of this information you'll find in our own housing production plan, and there are a lot of concepts that can be weaved into what our community goals are. Multifamily zoning, specifically new transit and neighboring communities, is important because the state leaders have declared that we are in a housing crisis. We have among the highest and fastest growing home prices and rents out of many of the states in the nation. We have rising costs dramatically increasing, and it's really a burden on low and middle income families. We've seen, particularly in this community, I know you heard stories of people who have, you know, whether it's downsizing seniors who selling their home and are looking for something that is smaller, or whether it's even younger families starting out, children leaving, coming back from college who can't afford something in the town. It's, you know, there's high housing costs are impacting people across the board throughout different demographics and groups. In addition, high housing costs are from a statewide level. It's sort of puts us against peer states. You risk, particularly in today's day and age with communities doing a lot of hybrid work and the business model not typically being what it is, there's a lot of incentive for people to move where the rents are not as, you know, they can get somewhere where their cost of living is much less. So that's sort of the state perspective. In addition, the question of like why zoning? What is zoning doing for multifamily? Oftentimes, and they've done a lot of study throughout the Commonwealth, that lack of zoning is the main barrier to housing development in Massachusetts. So the idea is that by allowing more multifamily housing near transit, we're sort of eliminating that barrier and reducing hurdles to allow these sort of walkable, more smart growth neighborhoods to be able to be developed. Looking at housing near transit schools, you know, et cetera, all the things we hear about complete streets and complete neighborhoods, looking at that. So that is why the state is doing this. And sort of a term that we'll also hear a lot is missing middle. And I think this is a really important diagram that you hear about in the planning world, because oftentimes people think generally in terms of, you see on the side, the detached single family homes, which Cohasset is predominantly dominated by. And then when we think about multifamily, we automatically go to very dense housing. Often with the state, and particularly what they're sort of looking at in smart growth principles, is this sort of missing middle, where you can be anywhere from duplex, triplex, sort of, you know, when they talk about live work, that's mixed use. When you have commercial on the first floor, we're seeing a lot more of that as we see our new developments, and particularly the harbor and the village. We're looking to see these work, live, play accommodations. So this is what they're trying to encourage, not particularly dictating that we do one cookie cutter shape of, you know, high housing density, but that they are encouraging communities to use this as an opportunity to do missing middle housing that's consistent with their community's goals and vision. I already discussed earlier that they'll allow you to do site plan as
Lauren,
free.
Diane had a question.
I'm sorry, I couldn't see your hand.
Sorry, Lauren, no, and I don't want to interrupt your rhythm, but I mean, in the middle, in this missing middle housing, which, you know, I agree that's something we should be looking at more of, but this particular legislation is requiring it in a certain place. It's asking us to place this, that's not necessarily within our community goals and guidelines. And I guess I'm asking for confirmation of that. And also that this isn't necessarily addressing what they were hoping with 40B, which is to provide affordable housing, because this theoretically is market, you know, it's not a, you know, a 6,000 square foot house on Jerusalem Road, but there's nothing stopping a developer, for example, if we were to create this multifamily zoning area, from, you know, doing a townhouse complex that he's selling for, you know, $800, $1,000 a unit.
Absolutely. So the inclusionary zoning and affordability house I'll speak to first. Anything that we did anywhere in town, unless we specifically worded against it in the zoning, would be subject to our inclusionary zoning, which is that any district in town, if you have 5 or more residential units in a project development, you're subject to inclusionary zoning, which means 10% of your housing stock needs to be deemed restricted affordable, eligible for the SHI, or, you know, you can meet the different criteria for the permit. You can do a payment in lieu, which is something our bylaw allows, or the other 2 options are you have to provide this unit. Either way, you have to do some sort of 10% equivalent to move the needle. With this zoning, that was one of the biggest critiques that they got in the draft phase from a lot of you know, people throughout the state. They've addressed it in their final guidelines. They do sort of encourage, but they're not requiring it still. And they sort of address the fact that with the cost of construction and development and the way that the market is right now, that you don't want to sort of overburden the requirement of affordability to make development infeasible from a financial cost point, because the cost of affordable housing development is so expensive that if you make it to a point where it's sort of it sort of just inhibits development, and that's counterintuitive to what state's trying to do. They're trying to encourage development. So they touch upon it, and they will allow, they encourage it to a certain level of percentage. But if you want to go above, for example, 20% of a requirement, you have to have a justifiable cause, and they make you go a little bit extra to require that level.
Thank you.
There's a second question you had, and I'm going to skip down. I've already discussed with you sort of what the regulations are, so I'm really just going to get into what it means for us, because there's a lot of like and if or situations. So using the 2020 housing units per their guidelines that I referenced earlier, talking about the subsidized housing inventory, they calculate, and our land area, looking at our developable land, because originally they said it had to be, the whole thing had to be within 0.5 miles of station area, which they even did an analysis and they knew that wasn't feasible. So they did calculations for each of the municipalities and then gave us back these minimum data sets. We have to have a minimum of 20% of our total land area district within a half a mile of our station radius. So the other 80% can be somewhere else beyond that radius, as long, we just have to sort of give a justifiable reason as to why that we think that's a suitable site. The minimum land area that they've calculated for our community, which is based on our total land area, is 43 acres. And the minimum unit capacity is 638 units. At first, I thought that was a mistake because when I did the calculation as a commuter rail community, our minimum requirement should be 15%. And they had installed sort of circuit breakers, as they said, so that each community wouldn't be overburdened with an amount. But that's one of the loopholes that I discovered, was that the circuit breaker is they won't allow more than 25% of each community's housing stock, so they're not going to overburden beyond 25%. But this calculation comes into the density per acre, which they're requiring a minimum of 15 units per acre. So it's the greater than, so that is why we wind up with 638, which comes out to like 19% of our housing stock. So it doesn't trigger that threshold that they've set out in the guidelines. So that is the minimum unit capacity. There's a lot to consider here. And there's a lot of questions to be had. I put together a quick example on the next slide to just give you something to sort of start to think about, to give me some sort of direction as to where you might be interested in going next. Because the deadlines now that we have to follow are, as a commuter rail community, we don't have to be in compliance, full compliance, until the end of calendar year 2024. That means having adopted zoning in place, getting through a town meeting cycle to adopt said zoning of a multifamily district if we want to come into compliance. In the interim, there's a deadline of January of this year, which will be upcoming 2023. So it'll be January 31st that we have to submit a compliance plan. I'm sorry, Jack, did you have a question?
No.
Okay, I'm sorry, I thought I heard you. So the interim compliance plan, it's a relatively short form. It's about a 6-page form, and you fill out your community data and what your sort of plan of attack would be. So for example, if you wanted to adopt this zoning district, you could say, we're going to go through a process, analyze some parcels, bring in a consultant to do feasibility, and plan to adopt the town meeting cycle in XYZ fashion. And it could be sort of a general, that's sort of what they're looking for roughly as to what communities plan to do. I put together this next slide, and I want to asterisk for you that this is solely for discussion purposes. These are example scenarios. I've chosen 3 parcels just to give you an idea, because the numbers are tough to not, when you don't look at it on maps, for me at least. I chose parcels A and B here, and I'll go into more detail on what they are, simply because they're already on the Route 3A corridor and they're sites that have existing multifamily housing. Another distinction before I get into this is that it doesn't matter what's on the ground right now for compliance, it's what you zone for. So these don't trigger compliance right now. We would have to change the zoning on the parcels to do this. However, I'm just using these as examples because they already have sort of models of what multifamily housing might look like. The third parcel I've chosen for you is just a parcel that's been sort of discussed and touched upon. It's in sort of not a half-mile radius, but sort of semi-close proximity to the commuter rail area. And it's been discussed in housing production plan, and it's town land, so it's the select board's parcel. So anything that would happen to that parcel would be, if anything, would be up to the select board. So I thought that these were 3 parcels just to use as a good example. I haven't done any deep dive. I'm just strictly looking at size and acreage here. Parcel A, if you took 3 parcels, you have 17.4 acres within a half a mile of the station area. That exceeds, at the minimum of the 20%, you only need 8.6 in the area. So if you use that, you would hit that 20% criteria. The preserve development, which is parcel B, that's formerly Avalon Bay, that site was developed under a 40B comprehensive permit, actually, which is how that permitting was allowed. That parcel, multifamily today, there's been potential kicked around in the past to potentially add maybe more units there. I don't know that that would be feasible, but that is something that it's a parcel that's 42.9 acres. And it's relatively close. I mean, again, I haven't done this, but it's in the 3A corridor, which has been identified in the housing production plan by the community as something that would be potentially a opportune area for more housing development. It's not in a floodplain. It's not in particularly sensitive area for the most part. again, with the caveat that any of these sites would need substantial more due diligence to do this. This is just strictly example. The last parcel I'll give you an example of is it's located behind the Cosset Music Circus and it's owned by the select board. It's 14 acres. It's located in an existing residential community. And this is sort of something that you could imagine in a scenario. You might do a 40R district, but it could be sort of, you could frame the zoning in such that you would do, whether you wanted to do duplex units, it could fit the multifamily definition, but not be super high density. And it's just an opportunity to potentially zone for something that you might need. And again, just for food for thought, the question I have for you tonight is how you want to proceed. And I imagine I will be back to you likely in December or January, because I just need direction from you as to how to respond to the state for the January 30th, January 31st deadline. Do you want to achieve interim compliance and say we will continue to explore the possibility of coming into full compliance, or are we not ready to take that step yet?
Let's see, Diane and then Corey.
I have a question about, let's hypothetically say we take all these parcels just as you designed them. What if there are environmental issues there? I mean, do we have to know for a fact that 20 acres that we're going to potentially zone as multifamily are developable? Or, you know, if there's some environmental, whatever, there's wetlands or something like that, and we only know that 20 acres, really only 5 acres of it is buildable.
We do need to know a certain degree of feasibility. You know, that's why sort of they, particularly at first, you can't do existing, if you know there's presence of wetlands, open space, you can't, you know, rezone open space type of thing. So we would have to do more feasibility assessment on this. And the other thing that another thing that I'll flag for you is that another question that we've brought up and a lot of people in the state have brought up is the availability of infrastructure. And so the state's response to that is we're not anticipating that the town will solve the lack of infrastructure for these private developments. It's that, you know, if the zoning allows for it and ultimately there are solutions, you know, on-site septic systems is sort of their response. So if the development really wants to occur, it will find a solution if, you know, for example, public sewer is not available.
When you say they will find a solution, in other words, the state's going to tell us what they expect us to do, and if it's difficult, they'll kick it back to us and say, find a solution?
For example, you know, the Avalon site has an on-site septic system. They're anticipating that if someone wants to, you know, develop a site and it's not readily, the public infrastructure is not readily available, then the private development would have to take on the burden of doing that.
Okay. Corey?
Yeah, thanks, Lauren. This is actually, it's great. Your last 3 options gives a perspective that I was missing. So for the preserve development, that was an LIP. So it's currently non-conforming, or was there an overlay district there? I don't remember.
So it's not described as non-conforming, but if you think about it in that manner, yes, it's non-conforming. There's no zoning change there. That was allowed under the permit that allowed it to happen. That's the same for 808 Jerusalem Road, 390 Chief Justice Cushing Highway. They're specific to the project and they run with the land and the project, but it's not zoning.
So, and that's 42.9, which is remarkably close to 43, which is convenient. So if we wanted to get that, but we still would need to get that 8.6. So basically at a minimum here, if we wanted to move forward with redoing the preserve, rezoning it because it's already kind of there, and I'm just doing hypotheticals here, we could just find 8.6 acres somewhere else, which, you know, could include maybe a parking lot here, but I mean, other stuff, and then we would be in compliance. Is that?
Right, but the 8.2 would just have to be in that half-mile station radius, right?
So I began this conversation with, I think with Diane's point of view, we're like, we just can't do this, but if we're allowed to, you know, I think we can look more at what it would mean to rezone the preserve, which is already developed. And I don't see anyone knocking that whole thing down and building more, especially with the limitations of infrastructure.
So Corey, just
so we can move forward.
Are you asking if we just took an existing thing and rezoned it? Would that count? I don't imagine it would, but.
It does, yeah. So I think Corey's point is all we have to do is zone for it. So we rezoned the preserve area to be compliant with this level of density, which is a lot, but still, that would count as part of towards this. Is that correct, Lauren?
Right, that's correct. And I would say with full honesty that you may see some level of infill development if you do allow that possibility. But to Corey's point, you already have, I mean, if you look at, I looked up the preserve the other day and I can't remember the figure, but it's, I mean, multi-million-dollar evaluation. The likelihood that someone's going to level that whole property to redevelop in the capacity that you're suggesting is unlikely.
It also has, I understand that there is the ability to expand it on that footprint, and Avalon Bay was offered that opportunity a couple of years ago, and they just said no. And I think it's probably because, in retrospect, they're preparing to sell it.
Mr.
But
Chair,
the
can I just
question-
finish my comments? You interrupted me, so let me just finish what I was
Sure,
saying.
go ahead.
Which is, it sounds like there's enough here, which I'm learning, which would warrant us to look into it more. That's all I wanted to say.
My point on your thing, Corey, was that if it's an existing multifamily, high density, and we rezone it, is that okay?
Yes,
Okay.
it doesn't matter what's currently developed on the ground. It's solely what is the zoning that counts.
Okay. That's a good
Pretty
thing to
good
know.
loophole.
That's what I was trying to figure out, Corey. And I think that's the same question you were asking. I was just looking for clarification. So other comments, Diane?
You know, I'm still in the I don't want to comply phase of things, because I feel like it takes away our ability to smartly develop our community. And you know, we did the housing production plan and have a housing committee and affordable housing trust committee that really are sensitive and open to, you know, TODs or inclusionary zoning we've got throughout town and putting together different housing types. What I feel like this does, though, is let's use that B example. If that were to get developed, you know, if Avalon was to basically, or whatever it's called now, were basically to double in size, you know, even if they handled their own septic, et cetera, we now potentially have, you know, an issue with schools. I mean, you know, how many people, and I know this was a big issue, and I was one of those people like, you know, we need Avalon, don't worry about it, and it'll work itself out in the schools. But as it is, you know, we're hearing about overcrowded schools, and potentially we could have, I don't know, 150, 200 more kids, you know, or more families that are using our services, et cetera, et cetera. And it's not just the infrastructure costs, it's the costs of running a community and providing police and fire and all the other things. So I think we have to think about that and hedge that against the grant threats that, you know, and I would like to see us do more proactive siting and permitting of multifamily dwellings outside of this mandate.
Corey?
So I think the decision point here is, do we just say no, right? We're just not going to bother, or do we investigate further? I don't see a downside to just investigating further, especially because to your point, Diane, about overcrowding, that's a number we should have. If they level Avalon, that's 200 some odd units, that's gone, right? So we're not adding 638, we're actually adding 415, right? So I'm wondering if we massage this a little bit, we may find out that the delta is smaller than we thought, or it may be still unacceptable. But I think we can chew on this a little bit further and at least make a good faith effort to figure out what it means to the community. And then we can still say no later on.
Yeah. Other comments? I tend to agree with, you know, Diane. Things like this, which are purported at a state level, are not sympathetic to communities like Cohasset, which is really a small rural, more developed now than it was, community with a charm because of that. And we have some severe issues with ledge and wetlands and things like that. So I'm not sure this is friendly to what we cherish about Cohasset. That being said, I do think we need to be paying attention and we need to be figuring out how we're going to deal with that. Because I think it's very clear that even though we might be able to say, hey, listen, we don't want the grant money. That's why I asked the question of Lauren earlier. I think what's going to happen is if they don't get us with the grant money, they'll come for us another way. So I think we do need to be proactive and we need to see clearly what this is and start thinking through ways to deal with it. Paul?
You know, I don't think the Commonwealth or the government gives a hoot about the ancillary effects that Diane mentioned. Schools, roads, population explosion. Who's going to build the schools? Who's going to pay for the roads? Who's going to provide the transportation? And in a town like this, or any other town for that matter, how much is too much? You know, we have no spaces left. Everything's been built, you know, within relative reason. So, but I don't think they take that into account. It's just a matter of looking good on paper, putting people into a spot that really can't accommodate them, you know, and it's nothing against any people coming into town. I'm all for affordable housing, but just you get to a point is how much is too much and how much can the town carry? Because we'll have to bear the expense of that at some point.
Well, having participated in prior lives in some things in the city, I think there's more than a little truth in what you say. And I think because of that, we have to understand that we are not getting a sympathetic, ear on Beacon Hill. And so, but we have to understand that, and we have to figure out what is likely to happen and how we can deal with the cards that were dealt. And I think it's important that we do that. Jean?
I don't necessarily disagree. I think, though, my concern is that given the incredible housing crisis the state and country is in, the state will continue to find ways to bring their mandate to life. And so, and that could be in ways that are very painful to Cohasset, including things like MSBA money, Chapter 91 money, things that we really do rely upon much more so than people might realize. And so I don't see a downside with continuing to investigate, particularly as other towns grapple with this and DHCD comes out with more. I'm not happy with the way the state is doing this at all. And I think that ultimately we may end up saying no to compliance, but I think let's not, there's nothing that we lose by waiting until the last moment as we get more facts.
Also,
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, we have to face, bitter as it may be. And I'm a realist. I have no illusions. That being said, we have a responsibility to our town to handle this in an intelligent manner and deal, as I said earlier, with the cards that were dealt as well as possible. And I think waiting. So what do we want to do on this? Do we want to mull this over and come back later? And Diane, I see your hand.
Yeah, I mean, I think given the time of January 31st, which is, I mean, and we're going to be in the holiday season and out
Yeah.
straight soon, I do think we need to give Lauren some direction tonight and certainly, while I'm projecting ahead, I don't see any problem unless I'm misunderstanding this with submitting that next step on January 31st. It's going to cost us some money, but that doesn't mean we're fully in at that point. Is that correct, Lauren? And honestly, we're also in the middle of a zoning, looking at our zoning laws anyway, and we probably need to make sure this is just part of the conversation before we make the drastic decision or to not go forward. The other thing I would recommend, because I did have a conversation with Representative Moschino like a couple months ago when this was first coming down. And she was very positive about it. And I would like to invite, I mean, seriously, there are our state rep and our state senator. I think they usually do come in and give us an update. Maybe we could invite them in January, give Lauren the direction to proceed to whatever we need to do for January 31st. But in the interim, I'd love to hear from them. They're representing other communities that are struggling as we are with this not being an ideal situation.
Could I ask this, Lauren, what is the minimum that we have to do to keep the guillotine blade from dropping on our head on the 23rd?
So by the end of January, we need to fill out the compliance form, which is just the intent to how we plan to comply and adopt a policy, a district by the end of the deadline of the end of 2024. So it doesn't automatically do anything. It just says to DHCD, we are interested in continuing to do this. This is how we're going to do it. This is our plan to achieve compliance. They don't anticipate that you'll do any actionable steps other than submit that form and tell them what you plan to do. So with that, I'd be happy to start to prepare a form for you to review, and so you're comfortable with what it looks like in the messaging that we're giving back to the state. And then what we can do is look at what other sort of, I can get you examples of, even like if you wanted to, we could either plan to go out to bid for services, or we can use an engineering consulting firm that we already have on deck to sort of do a deeper dive on parcels. There's all sorts of avenues we could explore here. So I can sort of gather you a suite of options as to how you might look at this and return to you for further consideration.
Jane?
I would suggest to my fellow select board members that we do not spend any money on this at this juncture. I would suggest that we recommend to Lauren to move forward in looking specifically at parcels A and B, which seem to be the ones with potential promise, and explore, again, without spending any money, what that might mean for purposes of constructing a plan that might include those design services after January, but come up with a straw man plan based on A and B.
I agree. I just wonder, can we do it without spending money though?
Yes.
Is there a way to do it without spending money, Lauren?
Yes, currently right now, yes.
Okay.
All right. I think that makes a good site. I think this is a wake-up call. And I think, Lauren, you're hearing that we are not enthusiastic about this, but we're looking at this as how we protect our town from what this could be very, and I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand earlier, Corey. Go ahead.
No, I was just, I'd add to the list, the area of North Main on the other side of the tracks where we had that LIP. I'd like to know if there's a couple acres there that instead of doing the whole TOD project, can we just get that minimum 8 acre requirement? Can we just squeak under the line? That's an option. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So I think everybody agrees with that. Do we need to have an official motion? I think, Lauren, you know where we want, and feel free to call me or whatever, but I think we need to figure this out, and thank you for bringing it to our attention.
Absolutely.
Okay, any other comments on this subject?
I have questions.
Diane.
One other question, which I won't go too far into, but Lauren, when does the Affordable Housing Trust next meet? Is it next week or
They meet
December?
next December 14th.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay. All right. Moving on.
Thank you all. Good
have-
night.
Thank you, Lauren.
Yeah, thank you, Lauren. I'm sorry, I should have, well, you really want to read the minutes. Speaking of minutes, I just got these this morning. I have not had a chance to review them. Anybody else had a chance to review all the minutes aside from Diane?
I did review them and I made a change, which I told
Well,
Tracy
I'm
about.
not
They're in our
prepared.
packet. yeah.
Well, 1025, I don't think was the right version.
Yeah.
So I'm okay moving everything but 1025. I think you gave us the wrong file.
Well, I opened the thing and when did they show up?
Wednesday,
Last-
last Wednesday.
Yeah, they were in.
Well, I was out of town, so I have not been
1025,
able to
yeah.
review
It's
them.
just, I think the
so,
wrong version. So I'm comfortable moving that we approved the minutes for October 11th, October 18th, November 1st, November 15th, and November 21st.
With,
Sorry.
I'll second that, just to note that we had the wrong address for Tim Davis, who spoke on the meeting of the 11:15, so I made that suggested correction, because there's two Tim Davises in town.
With the
Yes.
clerical correction.
With that clerical,
All right.
so I'll second it.
Okay, we've had a motion made and seconded to approve those with the clerical. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? I abstain because I was out of town. I didn't have a chance to read them. Town managers update?
A couple of quick things. The warrant should have hit everyone's house this weekend. Special town meeting is December 12th. That's 2 weeks from yesterday at the Sullivan Gymnasium at the high school, 7 p.m. Just a quick update that Thanksgiving Day road race was run under great weather. 825 registrants. The oldest finisher was 80. And there were 2 one-year-olds who registered. Don't know if they ran the whole race, but I think they completed their work. So it literally, we had participants between 1 and 80, including a number of folks who come home, not only from college, but to see family and stuff. So I was unfortunately not there, but there's updates on the Cohasset Rec Facebook page. Maybe let's see pictures. And one other update. Justin Schreier is our communications specialist, is coordinating December 10th, which is the tree lighting evening. He's actually been hard at work filming our facilities folks who have been very into the season.
They are today.
They were out today wrapping some trees. They were out today they get a platform on the pond. So over the next week or so, they'll be pulling together. So December 10th, 5 p.m. It's 5:15, I think.
5:15 is the tree lighting.
Tree lighting, but the little stroll will start, again, as I understand it, I think preliminarily featuring the state champion girls high school soccer team.
Oh, you stole my thunder.
No, mention that. But I'm saying that they'll be leading the little parade like last year's state champion high school football team. So again, Jack will be there as the chair, and anyone else, obviously, please be there to light the tree and count it down. It should be a fun evening. That's my update.
And Chris, we've asked, and I'll just say this, we've asked them to count us down to light the tree. We haven't heard back from them yet, just because we asked them today. But Pat Sullivan said that they would be ecstatic to take part in it. So I expect that they will be there as well.
Yes, well, excellent. Select board comments. I think I will start with Corey and we'll move down.
I won't steal Gene's thunder, so I will congratulate all of the Cohasset sports teams. There were a lot of hard-fought games. Not all, we don't win every time, but thanks to everyone that competes, and congrats to the men's team, US men's team, for making it to the elimination round of the World Cup.
Yep.
Oh,
Yes,
I
they
videotaped that, ruined it.
It's like international news. Like
Get it again. Paul.
I second Corey's comments and defer to Gene.
Congratulations to the Cohasset girls soccer team. And Diane, I know you.
I have a good follow-up.
Yep. So congratulations. Also, special congrats to my son who ran his first 5K, the Turkey Trot. First Cohasset race, first race ever. I won't name him so as to embarrass him, but congrats to all the athletes and the trotters. It was a great race.
Diane?
I, of course, wanted to congratulate the girls soccer team for winning the state championship Division 4, but I'm going to call out my very good friend Deb Beal for winning Coach of the Year for the girls soccer program that she runs, and her assortment of friends of mine who are the assistant coaches for that team. They are just amazing women and very dedicated to those kids, and they did a phenomenal job.
Nice.
Very good.
I want to say another shout out to the town hall committee. If there's ever been a committee and successor committees, and not just to the current committee, but to the 2 others, that has been one of the most difficult things to handle. They've worked very hard, and however we end up, we owe them a tremendous amount of gratitude. That being said, Chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstention? We are adjourned.